Good morning and welcome back to Bible time. And well, actually, we're starting Job today. So I will be posting these videos on my Facebook daily postings, mostly daily postings on Bible time on Facebook, but then also on my YouTube channel, Focus in the Chaos. All the videos that I make, I put over there and try to keep them by book, just so it makes it easier for those that might not be on Facebook and watching these at some point. So today we're starting Job. I gave you a lot last week in, if you were on Bible time, I gave you a lot of background information, but today we're going to just go over some things. That's what we're going to start with. We'll actually start reading the text and breaking it down in the next video. Okay, so these are some things. This was the most important thing, or the thing that stood out to me the most, is that there's really no consensus on who wrote this book, the book of Job, or when it was written. I believe it was written much later than it actually occurred. There's a few things that point to that. There have been suggestions of the author could have been Job himself, could have been Elihu, who will be in the story, or possibly Solomon or even Moses. And in those cases, that would have been what was told to them, right? So the time of Job actually falls, chronologically would come between, like, let's say Genesis 11 and 12 and the research that I did. So this is pre-Abraham, okay? This particular story, historical story, took place before the time of Abraham. So we want to remember a couple of things. They were not doing a lot of writing like we do today back then. That it was a much more difficult thing to actually get things written out. Books were not around like they are today. In fact, in early Christian history, when there was any type of reading being done, it was one person standing up and reading it who had the copy. It wasn't like today where you have, so many Bibles and so many different versions. And I'm not really sure. I haven't done a lot of research on like the time of when the Torah was written and put out for the Jewish people, and those would be like the first 5 books of the Old Testament is considered the Torah. I'm pretty sure that I have that right. I probably should double check that, but if my memory is correct. And I don't know if there was, they always had like someone standing and reading it throughout the Bible. When we hear about these things, someone standing and reading. So I don't know that there was a mass production of it, or if there was just a few copies that maybe some leaders had and read. So those are just some thoughts that came to my mind as we were going through it. And then I just wanted to kind of share that with you. So basically this is the outline. These are the things that, as I kind of was doing an intro to this, this story is of a righteous man whose suffering is granted by God to Satan, or actually in the original language, Hebrew, that is pronounced Satan. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that tomorrow, or in the next video, depending on if I get, hopefully tomorrow it'll get done. But okay, so these are the things that stood out to me in my read through of Job. God's ways are not ours. Often bad things do happen. Difficulties do occur, illness, death, war, but it's all with the permission of God, okay? God is in full control. He could stop it at any time. He could have allowed it to never have taken place to begin with. He could have prevented Adam and Eve from sinning, but he didn't, because he gave us all that little thing called free will. Freedom to choose God, or to turn your back on him and not choose him, and therefore be choosing the world, and in that case, Satan. He allowed all of this after the sin of Adam and Eve. Satan's evil was allowed into the world by that choice. Now, Satan was already here. Okay. I believe that he had to have already been here at the time of the creation of the world. The Lord had let him reside here because the testing had to come. The people, we humans we were going to be tested. Ultimately, that's what this is about. It's a test, right? You're going to be given the choice to follow me, the one who created you, the one who created the world you live in, the one who created your mind that works so beautifully and can come up with all of these different technologies throughout time, or you're going to choose to follow the enemy. So that is essentially sin created a dichotomy for us. It created a thing that we either have to accept the forgiveness of God for our sin or we don't, but we all are living under sin's punishment and for that first choice of Adam and Eve saying no to following what God told them to do and yes to what Satan told them to do. Okay, so I hope that was clear. And please remember that this is Lonnie speaking. This is as I'm reading through the things I'm pulling out. You may have a slightly different interpretation of things. As we all know, many people have many different interpretations of the Word of God. But that is why I like to do Bible study like this. We're going to go word by word, verse by verse. We're going to read it in the full story of Job. We're going to break down each, sometimes just a few verses, and we're going to talk about it because that's how we learn what the Word of God is really about. All right, so that is where Lonnie comes from. So just a little preview, whatever, if you've never listened to my videos before, or if you have and you didn't know that. So, okay, so now moving on to my third point was Job and friends get together to debate these issues of reward and punishment and eventually vindication by God. Okay, so we're going to get more into the beginning of that because it starts off hot, doesn't it? So we'll talk about some of that stuff when we get in chapter 1. So here is the outline. Chapter 1 through 2, verse 13 is a prologue. It's all the setup, right? It's all kind of getting us ready for what's going to come in the middle. Now, chapter 3, verses 1 through 26, the entire chapter is Job's opening lament. And we are going to hear a lot from a lot of different people. And it is hard. It's hard to hear. It's hard sometimes to comprehend. That's why we're going to go slow. Okay, chapters 4, verses 1 all the way through chapter 14 is the first round of the friends speaking. Then chapter 15 through chapter 21 is the second round of friends speeches. And then chapter 22 through all the way through 27 is the third round of speeches. And then chapter 28 is kind of interesting because it's the title that I found for it was The Hymn to Wisdom. I can't wait for us to get there and read through that and see what we think of it. Chapter 29 through 31 is Job's closing lament. And then we see a fourth friend who's going to speak up for the first time, Elihu. I believe I'm pronouncing that right, but I will look it up again. That's 32 through 37 is Elihu speaking. And then in 38 through 40, verse 2 only, is the first speech of God. God comes to speak. And then 40 3 through 5 is Job's first response to God. Then we see God coming back again, 40 through 41, his second speech. A second short response in 41 from Job. And then the final chapter, 42, is the epilogue. The end of chapter 42 is the epilogue. So this is in part, it's part of considered one of the wisdom books, because the Bible itself is set up in a way that is not always chronological time-wise, but it's set up like the books of the Torah, which were the teachings for the Israelites. Then we have the wisdom books, which we'll talk more about that another time, but then we get to the prophets. So when you say that we say, like, have found the Bible to be a little bit like, why is it repeating this over here? Well, because it's a different thing that's being pointed out now at this time. So I think when we know that, it kind of gives us a little more context for when we're reading through the Bible in this form it is today. It may not be chronological, but there is a reason, there is a purpose for it. Okay, then I've already I gave you a lot of background through the Bible Project. They really break down a lot. If you didn't listen to the podcast sessions and you're interested, I have them posted on my Bible Time Facebook. There's also their overview in there. They just really have a great way of talking about it. Now, what I loved was listening to the podcast was the first time I've done any of their podcasts. And they just like sit and have this conversation over many of the key points of Job. And I loved that. So if you didn't get to finish that, try to get that done throughout the course of this, because I think you'll find it interesting. They're both really intelligent men who have some really interesting questions. So I've been doing my research. I've listened to a couple of different pastors talking about Job, and I'll be doing that throughout. That unfortunately aren't things that I can share because of the place I listen to them on. It's not shareable. I don't really know why, but it's like a paid service thing, and I don't know. But anyway, I will glean with you some of the wisdom I gained from these two other men also as we go through. So tomorrow, just be ready for, we're only tackling the first 12 verses. I think we're going to make it through the first 12. So I can't wait to read through Job with you. And God bless you. And we'll see you in chapter 1.